Neil Sedaka was one of the most gifted songwriters and performers that popular music has ever produced. For more than 6 decades, his voice floated across radio stations, living rooms, and concert halls around the world. Songs that he wrote and sang became the soundtracks of people's lives, attached to first dances and summer memories and the particular sweetness of being young and in love. He was a man who seemed to pour every emotion he had directly into music, and the world received that gift with enormous gratitude. Which is why, in the final days of his life, what Neil Sedaka chose to say and how he chose to say it left so many people quietly devastated. Neil was born in Brooklyn, New York, in March of 1939. From the very beginning, it was clear that music was not just something he enjoyed, but something that lived inside him at a level deeper than ordinary talent. He studied classical piano as a child and showed a level of ability that suggested a serious future in performance. His piano teacher at the time reportedly wrote a letter to his mother describing him as genuinely gifted. But Neil was also drawn to the popular sounds around him, to the rhythms of early rock and roll, and the emotional directness of songs that spoke plainly about love and longing and heartbreak. As a teenager, he began writing songs with his friend Howard Greenfield, and that partnership would go on to produce some of the most enduring music of the 20th century. The two of them had an almost instinctive chemistry, with Greenfield supplying the words and Neil providing the melodies. What came out of that collaboration was extraordinary. Song after song connected with audiences in a way that felt personal and universal at the same time. Neil had a gift for melodies that stayed with you, the kind that you found yourself humming hours after hearing them, as if they had quietly moved into your memory and decided to stay. His career had its peaks and valleys, as most long careers do. He experienced enormous success in the early 1960s, then went through a period of relative quiet in the American market, then staged one of the most celebrated comebacks in music history in the mid-1970s. That second wave of success was deeply meaningful to him. It was proof that real talent does not simply disappear, that if the songs are good enough and the connection with the audience is genuine enough, the music finds its way back. He spoke about that comeback with real feeling in many interviews. Over the years, as someone who had known what it felt like to be sidelined and who never took his place in the spotlight for granted afterward, his personal life was anchored by his wife, Liba, whom he married in 1962. Theirs was a long and loving partnership, the kind of marriage that is genuinely rare in the music industry, where relationships are so often tested and broken by the pressures of fame and travel and the emotional intensity that comes with a performing life. Neil spoke about Liba with deep affection throughout their decades together. She was his constant, the stable and loving presence at the center of everything else. To understand what she meant to him is to understand a great deal about the man himself. In his later years, Neil remained remarkably active. He continued performing, continued writing, continued engaging with audiences who had loved him for half a century and younger listeners discovering his work for the first time. There was something almost joyful about watching him at the piano in those later years. The same delight in the music that must have been there when he was a child playing in Brooklyn, still present and still genuine after everything the decades had brought. And then came the final chapter. In the days before Neil Sedaka passed away, he left behind words and messages that struck the people who received them as unusually tender, unusually reflective, as if some part of him understood that time was short and that certain things needed to be said. Those who were close to him described a man who seemed to be gathering his thoughts, looking back over a long and full life, and wanting to make sure that the people he loved knew exactly how he felt about them. He expressed gratitude. He expressed love. He reached out in ways that felt deliberate and warm, not alarming, exactly, but deeply thoughtful in a way that became clear only afterward. The message he left, the final communication that became so haunting once it was understood in the context of what followed, was essentially a farewell wrapped in the language of love. It was not dramatic. It did not announce what was coming, but it carried a weight that those who read it or heard it later felt deeply. It was a reminder of what mattered, stripped of everything unnecessary. The music, the people, the love that had carried him through a lifetime. When news broke that Neil Sedaka had died, the grief among his fans was immediate and sincere. These were not people mourning a distant celebrity, but people who felt as though they had lost someone connected to the most personal parts of their own histories. His songs had been with them through moments that defined their lives, and now, the man behind those songs was gone. What stays, of course, is the music. It always stays. The melodies that refuse to leave your head, the lyrics that seemed to say exactly what you were feeling at exactly the right moment. The voice that was warm and clear and full of genuine emotion. That is the legacy Neil Sedaka left behind, and it is an extraordinary one. But in those final days, in that final message, he reminded the world of something beyond the music. He reminded everyone who heard it that at the end of everything, what a person reaches for is connection, is love, is the simple truth of how much other people have meant. That is not just haunting, that is beautiful. And it is exactly what you would expect from a man who spent his entire life turning human feeling into song.